Hey there, and welcome to my channel. I'm Ashley Willingham, a sinner saved by grace, and an author of clean Christian fantasy romance books filled with adult characters, action, adventure, on-page prayer, and God's truths. You're listening to the free serialized audiobook for Ink and Ivy, my cozy Christian fantasy romance, Book One in the Gracehaven series. Don't forget to like and subscribe. God bless and enjoy.
Chapter 42. The familiar, comforting aroma of Earl Grey tea and freshly baked blueberry scones washed over her as she pushed through the door of the wisteria an hour later and stepped into the front parlour. The elegant space hummed with low, polite conversation. With school now out for the day, Mrs. Whitfield and her girls clustered around a lace-draped table, enjoying a well-appointed afternoon tea. At another table sat a well-dressed couple of crystal fae visiting from Coppergate. Their prismatic wings glittered in the light pouring through the windows, casting splashes of delicate colour across every nearby surface. And there was Soren, his own eagle wings tucked against his back as he smoothly glided between both tables, pouring tea and serving scones. When his eyes snagged on her, though, he hesitated mid-step. Goodness! Did she truly look as awful as she felt? Folding her arms across her chest, Ivy offered up a weak smile. "Is Grandma Evelyn here?" Before the Sky Fae could answer, a gentle voice drifted down from the upper floor. "Is that my Ivy I hear?" Grandma Evelyn appeared at the landing of the pothos-draped staircase. Her snow-white hair was pinned up in its usual immaculate twist, the fabric of her day dress perfectly pressed and orderly. Despite her years, the older woman possessed an enduring vitality, moving with an effortless, steady grace as she began her descent. "I didn't know you were coming to see me," Grandma Evelyn continued, her warm smile crinkling the corners of her eyes. The quiet announcement immediately drew the attention of the parlour. The Whitfield girls paused with their teacups hovering, and the Crystal Fae couple turned in their seats. A hot flush of self-consciousness prickled across the back of Ivy's neck, as those curious, assessing glances swept over her no-doubt frazzled appearance. Pretending as though she didn't see them, she hurried across the floral rug to meet Grandma Evelyn at the bottom of the steps, eager to escape the weight of the room's sudden scrutiny. "Do you—" Ivy dragged in a ragged breath, her fingers digging tightly into the sleeves of her own dress as she wrapped her arms more tightly around herself. "Do you perhaps have time today to speak with me? I have a bit of a problem." Grandma Evelyn paused on the final step, but rather than answering immediately, she simply held out her hands. She stood there, a quiet picture of patience, waiting. Slowly, Ivy let her defensive posture fall away, unfolding her arms. Warm, soft palms instantly enveloped her own. "I always have time for you," Grandma Evelyn insisted, the unwavering certainty in her tone sending a lump to form in Ivy's throat. She managed a single jerky nod and rapidly blinked her eyes, staring down at their joined hands, fighting against the fresh, hot threat of tears. Giving her fingers a gentle, reassuring squeeze, Grandma Evelyn led her past the parlour and directly toward the swinging doors of the private kitchen. "Come now," the older woman murmured, her voice a soothing balm against Ivy's thoroughly frayed nerves. "Let's go fetch a cup of tea and one of these fresh scones I just pulled out of the oven, and you can tell me all about it." By the time Ivy finally fell quiet, only a single stray crumb remained of her third blueberry scone. It had been a magnificent pastry, a crisp, golden-brown crust giving way to a warm, buttery centre bursting with sweet, jammy berries and the faintest, brightening hint of lemon zest. The perfect treat to make her taste buds sing, even as she simply poured it all out. The absolute disaster of Friday evening. Her heart-wrenching suspicions regarding Fern's true identity. The silence stretching between her and Marigold. The agonizing sensation of her own mind unspooling like a dropped ball of yarn, pulled in a dozen directions at once. And worst of all, her terrifying new role as assistant to the children's minister. a post she was absolutely certain she would fail at, given she couldn't even remember to meet Daphne for a simple afternoon lunch. Silence settled over the private kitchen, save for the steady ticking of the mantel clock. Sitting across the table from her, Grandma Evelyn lifted her delicate porcelain teacup, completely finishing off her own Earl Grey before returning the cup gently to its saucer with a quiet clink. "You have endured a great deal in a very short time, my sweet girl," the older woman finally murmured, her tone rich with empathy. "And I know that a great deal of this has been disappointing to you, but I am so proud that you did exactly right in taking these burdens to the Lord first, and by seeking to serve your community instead of retreating into your own hurts." Grandma Evelyn reached across the table, her hand covering Ivy's own. "But I hope you aren't throwing yourself into this ministry because you think you need to somehow make amends for who you are or otherwise earn God's grace." The innkeeper's tone turned gentle when she further cautioned. "There is no amount of work we can do to earn that grace, Ivy. It is a gift. It has already been fully earned for you through Jesus Christ. You cannot lose it simply because you feel as if you are failing. It is yours, not because of your works, but because of His love and righteousness." Ivy swallowed hard, nodding slowly. "I know," she whispered. But even knowing, it was still good to be reminded. Sniffing, she sat up a little straighter and reassured the other woman. "I promise I did not volunteer for this post because I'm trying to prove something. I did it because I felt called." Quieter, a little sheepish still, she added, "I don't think I'll be very good at it, to be honest, but I still feel as if it's where He wants me to be." Grandma Evelyn's smile softened. "Good," she whispered, patting her hand. "Now, as for Marigold, all you can do for her is to continue to pray. Keep letting her know that you care for her. When she is ready, she will come and initiate a conversation." Again, Ivy nodded, wrapping the profound comfort of the older woman's wisdom tightly around her battered heart. She wasn't very good at waiting, but she would wait as long as Mary needed her to wait. "But as for your forgetfulness," Grandma Evelyn's smile turned suddenly wistful. "You know, your father was the exact same way." Ivy blinked, entirely taken aback. "My father?" She tried to search her childhood memories, but her brow only furrowed in confusion. He had always seemed so steady. She certainly couldn't remember him ever being as scattered and chaotic as she currently felt. Grandma Evelyn gave another knowing nod. "He tried very hard to manage it all by writing absolutely everything down so he wasn't forced to remember it, by always carrying his pocket watch so he didn't lose track of time, by enlisting your mother's help." The older woman trailed off, her gaze turning distant for a fraction of a second. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, she gently withdrew her hand, pushed her chair back from the table, and rose to her feet. Ivy's eyebrows shot upward, following Grandma Evelyn's movements. "Where are you going?" "We are going shopping," the innkeeper gently corrected, smoothing down the front of her skirts. "Clearly, you are in need of some better systems to help you manage your days. And for better systems, we need—" she waved her hand vaguely in the air, "tools." Uneasiness dropped like a stone into Ivy's stomach. "What sort of tools?" she asked, a terrible suspicion taking root in her mind. She feared she already knew. Grandma Evelyn's smile deepened for just a moment, her eyes glinting with a flash of poorly suppressed humour. "The sorts of tools only sold at Vail's Vellum." Chapter 43. The bell mounted above the door chimed a bright, clear note as Ivy cautiously followed Grandma Evelyn inside the shop she had been completely avoiding ever since Mr. Vail first took it over. Her beloved corner shop. As the door clicked shut behind them, the ambient noise of the Gracehaven streets faded away, leaving them enveloped in hushed quiet. The air within the shop was cool and still, heavily perfumed with a rich blend of cedarwood, crisp pressed parchment, the metallic tang of iron gall ink, and sweet binding glue. Late afternoon sunlight poured through the large front windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the air and illuminating the meticulously organized shelves lining the walls. shelves holding all manner of sketchbooks, notebooks, paintbrushes, quill pens, paints, ink.
"I will be right with you."
A familiar deep baritone called out from somewhere in the shadowy back rooms of the shop. "Oh, take your time," Grandma Evelyn cheerfully called back, already making for a stack of pretty leather-bound notebooks sporting jewel-toned covers. "We are simply browsing." Left to her own devices, Ivy let herself drift, her curiosity piquing as she endeavoured to look at absolutely everything Mr. Vael had on display. It was all so neatly arranged, a study in absolute precision, from the colour-coordinated glass bottles of ink to the perfectly aligned stacks of heavy vellum. Scattered thoughtfully throughout the displays were various potted plants, breathing a touch of vibrant life into the sterile exactness of the room. She brushed her fingertips past the fragrant sprigs of a potted myrtle, earning a quiet rustle from the plant in reply. But as she rounded the end of a shelf, her hand abruptly fell away. Tucked into a ceramic pot sat a cluster of maidenhair ferns, their delicate lacy fronds trembling slightly in the wake of her passing. A sharp, phantom ache squeezed her chest. Fern. Swallowing against the sudden dryness in her throat, she forcefully tore her gaze away from the plant and continued toward the front counter. Grandma Evelyn's soft humming floated toward her as her attention aimlessly drifted over the neat ledger book, the polished brass inkwell, and finally snagged upon a folded broadsheet that seemed entirely out of place. The Clarion. She frowned, tilting her head to the side, trying to read the upside-down print. It looked remarkably like one of those scandalous gossip papers from the capital that Daphne was always so eager to get her hands on, penned by a mysterious Madame Clarion. She squinted, trying to decipher the boldest text, but the upside-down letters merely swam together. Biting her lip, Ivy cast a quick, guilty glance toward the back room. Silence. Carefully, she reached out and twitched the broadsheet around to face her. Her eyes immediately snagged on the largest headline dominating the centre of the page. Has the Duke of Guildenspire lost his mind? Her pulse spiked as she leaned over the counter, swiftly devouring the block of text beneath. The rumour currently taking the ton by storm, my dear readers. The shocking news that His Grace Caelen Vael, the Duke of Guildenspire, is Veritas's most eligible bachelor no longer. After disappearing in the very middle of the season, much to the dismay of this year's debutantes and their terribly eager mammas, it is now said that His Grace has abdicated from his position entirely, passing the prestigious title of Duke to his younger brother, Lord Darius Vael. The soft, measured shush of booted footsteps against the polished floorboards abruptly broke the silence.
"Miss Fairwood?"
Mr. Vail's familiar voice unfurled from just in front of her, a distinct note of surprise edging the syllables. Ivy violently flinched backward, her cheeks instantly flooded with a scalding, guilty heat. Desperate to hide her snooping, her hand darted out, snatching up the very first item her fingers grazed, an innocuous slip of paper resting directly beside the broadsheet. Pinning a bright smile to her face, she waved the little paper at him. "Mr. Vael," she greeted, her voice pitching entirely too high. "I was just admiring your—" She trailed off, her gaze finally snagging on the man in question. The man who was seemingly no longer a duke. The man standing behind the counter, dressed impeccably in a dark waistcoat and shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. She had never seen him without a tailcoat before. Her attention shifted, snagging on his exposed forearms. His pale, muscular forearms. She blinked and glanced away again, her cheeks burning all the more as her gaze dropped to the paper now clutched in her trembling hand. I was just admiring your—" Her stomach twisted. It was not stationery, it was not a receipt. It was a hastily penned, half-finished shopping list, no doubt detailing the items he intended to fetch from Brightley's mercantile later that evening. Milk, flour, eggs. Ivy clamped her mouth shut, utterly mortified. Slowly she peeked back his way. Already he was busy writing his appearance, rolling his sleeves back down and buttoning them at the wrists. When their eyes locked, though, he raised a single eyebrow at her.
"My need for more flour already. Only halfway through the week,"
he supplied, his tone impossibly dry. Sheepishly, she set the grocery list back onto the countertop. It is a very nice list. The corners of his lips twitched. Slowly, he strolled closer until he was standing just opposite her behind the counter, until the scent of dark chocolate joined the medley of aromas already washing over her senses. With a smooth sweep of his hand, he gathered up both the shopping list and the scandalous broadsheet, neatly folding them away from prying eyes.
How might I assist you ladies today?
He asked, the very picture of the polite Veritas gentleman once more, as his gaze flicked between her still warm face and Grandma Evelyn, who was now happily wandering over with a stack of journals in her arms. Miss Ivy is in need of your expertise, Mr. Vael, Grandma Evelyn announced, setting her stack onto the counter with a soft thud. She needs the perfect notebook to help keep her life in order and her days structured. Ivy winced, a hot wave of self-consciousness washing over her, especially when Mr. Vail's attention immediately flashed back her way.
Indeed?
He reached for the top journal, his fingers trailing over the embossed leather cover.
Well, this particular one features a highly structured weekly grid, excellent for regimenting one's hours. And this one?
He shifted to the next, opening the crisp, cream-coloured pages to reveal that they were ruled.
Is designed for detailed daily indexing. The paperweight is quite forgiving to heavier ink flows.
A familiar, stifling pressure mounted in her chest. Another notebook? She had a dozen half-filled notebooks scattered across her bedroom floor. She hardly needed one more further cluttering her space. I do not need a new notebook, she cut in, her voice quiet, albeit firm. Mr. Vail paused mid-page turn. I already have plenty of notebooks, she continued, the words tumbling past her lips. My issue is that Ivy trailed off, her throat tightening. Did she truly wish to bear her greatest inadequacies to him? She stared down at the countertop, her gaze tracing the wood grain there, while his gaze burned against the top of her head. But he did not press. He did not hurry her along in explaining herself. He merely stood there in the quiet shop, watching her, patiently waiting. Shooting a quick look toward Grandma Evelyn, who offered her an encouraging smile, Ivy finally dragged her gaze back to Mr. Vail and heaved out a quiet sigh. She might as well tell him, especially if they were going to be working together at church. I often forget things, Mr. Vail, she admitted, her voice dropping to a soft murmur. Eventually I will remember them, but that is usually not until I am out in the world, away from my desk, and unable to write them down again. He snapped his fingers, the sharp crack making her jump.
A Coppergate fountain pen,
he blurted out. Ivy's brow furrowed. I'm sorry. Beside her, Grandma Evelyn raised her eyebrows in intrigued silence. Mr. Vail crouched down behind the counter, out of sight. The distinct click of a key turning in a lock sounded, followed by the soft slide of a drawer. When he stood back up, he carefully set a small, black velvet-lined tray between them.
What you need is a Coppergate fountain pen,
he explained, a rare thread of genuine enthusiasm weaving into his usually indifferent tone.
They are a rather brilliant new invention. I managed to acquire a few prototypes from the artisans there.
He gestured to the 3 polished metal instruments resting against the plush velvet.
They are a type of writing utensil, built with an internal reservoir for ink. It entirely eliminates the need for a dipping well, making them perfect for writing on the go.
Oh, they sound so very exciting, Grandma Evelyn breathed, leaning closer to inspect them. Ivy chewed on the inside of her cheek, eyeing the velvet display. They sound expensive, she mumbled. Mr. Vail flicked a quick, unreadable look her way before lowering his gaze back to the pens. He plucked up the slenderest of the 3, a beautiful green lacquered piece with silver accents. Leaning closer until they were sharing the same narrow sliver of space over the counter, he uncapped the pen with a smooth twist.
You see?
Before she could utter a single word, he was already pressing the writing instrument into her grip, his fingers brushing against hers. Gentle, warm, lingering. Her breath caught in her throat. She shot him another startled glance. Had he meant to do that? But he was already pulling away, his gaze elsewhere. All business now, he pushed a piece of scrap paper toward her.
Here, try it.
Swallowing hard, she dropped her gaze to the page and carefully sketched a few sweeping loops across it. The ink flowed effortlessly. Not a single drop spilled. No dipping required. It was perfect. "How marvellous!" Grandma Evelyn exclaimed, clapping her hands together once. "We will certainly take one of those if you are willing to part with it, and a new notebook, whichever you think is best. One can never have too many notebooks."
Of course, Grandma Evelyn.
He readily agreed, selecting the journal he had indicated contained a weekly grid.
I will get these wrapped for you in just a moment. Do let me know if there is anything else you might like.
"Oh, yes. Let me see." The older woman wandered off, clearly not yet finished with her shopping. Carefully setting down the prototype pen, Ivy whispered, "You must not let her try to pay for these things for me. I can manage them perfectly on. The rest of her words dissipated on her tongue as Mr. Vael leaned in that much more, swiftly overwhelming her with his nearness, his scent. Curling her hands into fists to keep them from visibly trembling, she dropped her gaze to his waistcoat, endeavouring to stare at the polished buttons there instead of him.
Am I right in thinking?
He asked, his baritone dropping to a velvet-soft whisper meant only for her.
That you might be worried about this new ministry work too, Miss Fairwood? Keeping your thoughts and ideas surrounding it orderly, I mean.
Her spine immediately stiffened. The instinctual urge to hotly deny the very idea rose in her throat, desperate to be loosed. She didn't want him to think she was incapable. She didn't want him to regret agreeing to let her help plan the summer events for the children. But when she finally hazarded a look up at him again, she didn't find him staring at her with the frosty disdain she had expected, nor the aristocratic judgment. Within that breath-stealing nearness, he merely searched her face, his demeanour laced with a quiet, observant curiosity that seemed to see straight through her defences. As if there were no use hiding it. As if he already knew all her secrets. Chapter 44. The denial melted away on her tongue. "Yes," she quietly confessed. A low, thoughtful hum vibrated deep within his chest.
I thought so.
Ivy squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for his inevitable rejection, for his cold dismissal informing her that he hardly needed an assistant burdened by so many faults and daily shortcomings. Instead, the rich scent of dark chocolate and ink enveloped her just a touch more.
Then what we need,
he whispered, his tone turning curiously conspiratorial,
is a companion notebook.
He abruptly pushed off the counter. The cool air of the stationery shop immediately rushed back into the space he abandoned, leaving her reeling from the sudden absence of his warmth. "A companion notebook?" she echoed, her eyelids fluttering open in a series of stunned blinks. Mr. Vael was already crouching down, disappearing completely behind the counter again. Another metallic rattle and the soft slide of a wooden drawer echoed through the quiet space.
Yes, they are quite rare, actually, but I do happen to have one pair.
When next he rose, resting upon his palm were two identical pocket-sized journals. Bound in supple midnight blue leather, a subtle, iridescent geometric pattern shimmered across the covers, catching the light like polished scales. A spark of recognition flared. Bastian has one of those. She had caught him reading out of it on more than one occasion, though now that she knew they were supposed to be quite rare, perhaps that was meant to be a secret.
Does he?
Mr. Vael paused.
How intriguing.
A frown tugged at her lips. Why is that intriguing? Rather than answering, he reached across the counter and gently pressed one of the shimmering notebooks into her hand, followed immediately by the slender, green-lacquered fountain pen.
Write something, and you will see.
She rubbed her thumb across the leather, marvelling at how soft it was. Flipping open the cover, she stared down at the blank cream-coloured paper. A heavy beat of hesitation pounded against her ribs. It was far too pretty a notebook. Anything she wrote would ruin it. But Mr. Vael was waiting, watching. Finally, she put pen to paper. The metal nib glided across the top line with a satisfying, whisper-soft scratch. Ivy Fairwood. Mr. Vael popped open the cover of the second notebook, angling the pages entirely out of her view. He gave a single, satisfied nod to himself and plucked up another of the new pens from Coppergate.
And I will write something, too.
Ivy's frown merely deepened as she watched him write. How was any of this supposed to help her with their ministry work? Then, a sudden motion within her own notebook captured her attention. Just beneath her name, dark ink spontaneously bloomed against the page. The fluid script unfurled stroke by stroke into an elegant, masculine hand. Caelen Vael. Her jaw went slack. She stared at the page, completely and utterly stunned. With a faint, satisfied twist of his lips, Mr. Vael turned his notebook around and set it flat upon the counter beside hers. They were perfectly identical. Both little books bore the name Ivy Fairwood in her neat script, followed immediately by Caelen Vael in his careful, sweeping hand. "It's magic," she gasped.
Actually,
Mr. Vael matter-of-factly corrected.
it is a simple case of entangled particles. A rather fascinating process wherein the parchment fibres are bound together on a molecular...
He paused, meeting her confused stare. Clearing his throat, he swiftly amended.
But magic is a much easier explanation, Miss Fairwood, so we can simply settle on that.
Before she could gather her scattered wits to form a proper reply, his posture shifted. The man's warm, conspiratorial mien vanished, instantly replaced by that cool, unreadable mask of his she had come to know so well.
I will just have these wrapped for you then,
he declared, carefully retrieving both her companion notebook and the green fountain pen from her slack grasp.
And now any time you have a thought concerning our ministry work, you can share it with me instantly. No need for you to fret about remembering to tell me later.
He had not judged her. He had not cast her aside as a broken, scattered thing. Instead, he had offered a marvellously clever solution, tethering her chaotic mind to his steady one so she would never have to worry about failing the children this summer with her forgetfulness. The sheer weight of his thoughtfulness crashed over her, entirely washing away the lingering remnants of her anxiety. A thick lump swelled in her throat. She swallowed hard against it. "Thank you, Mr. Vael. I fear I do not have any coin on me, but I will stop by first thing in the morning and pay you properly for all of this." The rapid clatter of footsteps upon a wooden staircase abruptly shattered the moment. From an arched doorway tucked into the shadowy rear corner, Elodie burst into the main room, her braided hair bouncing against her back with each step. "Papa, if you are going to Brightley's for the flour and eggs anyway, might I please have some more peppermint?" The little girl skidded to a halt, her eyes going wide as they landed upon the front counter. A delighted gasp escaped her. "Miss Ivy! Grandma Evelyn!" The tightness gripping Ivy's throat dissolved, instantly eased by the sight of Elodie's joy. What a ray of sunshine she always was. "Elodie," she greeted, offering the girl a warm smile. "Oh, I am so very glad to see you." At last, Grandma Evelyn moved to rejoin them at the counter, her arms now full of various painting supplies. "Good afternoon, little one. We certainly missed your bright company at Crochet Club this past weekend. I do hope you will be returning to us this Saturday." Trailing breathlessly behind Elodie, Mrs. Creedy, the Vael's stout, curly-haired halfling housekeeper, finally emerged through the archway. "Miss Elodie, please, you mustn't run on the stairs." "Oh, good day, Miss Fairwood. Mrs. Caldwell." But Elodie paid the flustered housekeeper no mind. She practically launched herself across the shop, her hand darting out to snatch up Ivy's. "Oh, I feel like I haven't seen you in ages," the little girl gushed, trying to pull her toward the rear staircase. "You simply must come upstairs and see my room, Miss Ivy. Papa has been letting me try my hand at growing some herbs in the windowsill, and my basil just sprouted. Perhaps you can help the others along. Papa said plants rather like you, but of course they would. You're terribly agreeable. Oh, and then you could stay for dinner. You could both stay for dinner. Finally, Elodie acknowledged poor Mrs. Creedy, but only to shoot a pleading look her way. Mrs. Creedy, can we set a place for 2 more guests? The housekeeper's cheeks flushed. I'm sure, that is to say. She darted a glance toward Mr. Vael, but he did not offer a single word to either encourage or deter Elodie's enthusiasm. He merely retrieved a sheet of crisp brown paper and some twine from beneath the counter. As he methodically began to wrap her purchases, his observant gaze rested heavily upon her from the corner of his eye, silently watching her reaction. "Oh, I couldn't possibly impose on such short notice," Ivy hastily interjected, her own cheeks warming beneath his quiet scrutiny. She gently squeezed Elodie's hand, not wanting to disappoint the girl overly much. "But perhaps another time?" Grandma Evelyn gracefully stepped in to aid with her retreat. "And I have guests at the wisteria I must join for supper tonight, my dear. But it was a lovely idea. Thank you. We will absolutely endeavour to join you another time." Elodie's shoulders slumped, a sigh deflating her sudden burst of energy. But her disappointment was short-lived. In the very next second, she perked right back up, her eyes sparking with a brand new idea. "Well, you did say you would take me out into the woods to forage for herbs sometime, Miss Ivy," Elodie reminded her, bouncing on her toes once more. "Perhaps we can go this Saturday before Crochet Club." Lowering her voice, the girl revealed, "I did so wish to attend last week's meeting, but Papa made me stay home to help him entertain Uncle Lucien and Aunt Lysandra." Another smile tugged at Ivy's lips at the prospect of a quiet, familiar walk beneath the trees. Well, perhaps not quiet, but it would be a delight to share her knowledge with Elodie all the same, showing her which plants to avoid, which made the best teas. "I would love to," she decided, though this time she spared a far more uncertain glance toward Mr. Vael. "So long as it is all right with your papa, of course." From behind the counter, the man exhaled a long, quiet sigh through his nose, tying off the twine in a tidy bow.
"I do not disapprove of the idea, Miss Fairwood, but I will admit that I do not like the thought of you 2 out in the forest without an escort."
Elodie immediately abandoned Ivy's hand, rushing over to press herself against the edge of the front counter. "Oh, please, Papa. We will be careful. We won't go far." Mrs. Creedy settled her hands firmly upon her hips. "And why can't you simply escort them, sir?"
"The shop is open on Saturdays, Mrs. Creedy,"
Mr. Vael patiently reminded her, his attention drifting toward the sunlit front windows.
"I must tend the counter."
"Then you must simply close the shop at noon for a picnic in the woods," Grandma Evelyn cheerfully suggested. "I assure you, Mr. Vael, not a single soul in Gracehaven would fault a man for taking an afternoon off for a family outing." A family outing. The words hung heavy in the fragrant cedarwood-scented air of the shop. Heat unfurled across the back of Ivy's neck as she abruptly glanced away, taking a sudden interest in the lacy fronds of the maidenhair ferns across the room. Yet, she could not quite bring herself to look away completely. From the very corner of her eye, she anxiously tracked the movements of the elven man standing behind the counter. The elven man who flicked another slow glance her way, as if studying her in turn. For a moment, no one spoke. But then that moment passed.
"Very well,"
he conceded, the rigid line of his jaw softening.
"We will have an outing on Saturday, so long as you find such an arrangement agreeable, Miss Fairwood."
Elodie squealed with her excitement, as if the matter had already been decided. Ivy could only nod her agreement, the words having entirely fled her once again. Of course. Saturday, a family outing. With Elodie and Mr. Vael. Chapter 45. A deep ache had settled into Ivy's bones by the time she finally had a chance to return to her apartment much later that evening, taking care to slip inside as quietly as possible so as not to disturb Marigold. Despite her best attempts to drag her best friend along with her to the wisteria for dinner with Daphne, Felix, Bastian, and Sir Charles, Mary had insisted on retiring the moment the Honeybloom closed its doors for the day. Now, their sitting room lay utterly dark and still, with only the potted ferns and broad-leafed monsteras crowding the large side window still awake to greet her. Her gaze trailed toward Marie's closed bedroom door, hunting for any sign that the other woman might still be awake. No light spilled from beneath the door. An ache of a far different kind took root in her chest. Carefully tucking her still-wrapped parcel from Vael's vellum beneath her arm, she padded across the room and settled a plate housing Grandma Evelyn's leftover blueberry scones in front of Marigold's room. Hopefully, it would prove to be a pleasant surprise come morning. Slipping into her own bedroom, she carefully pushed the door shut with a soft click. Deep shadows draped the space, pierced only by the pale shafts of moonlight spilling past the lace curtains of her window. She took a step forward in the dark, and immediately tripped. With a startled gasp, she pitched forward, her boots tangling in the chaotic sea of half-filled notebooks she had left scattered across the floorboards earlier that afternoon. She scrambled for purchase, blindly stumbling her way through the mess toward her bedside table. Trembling fingers finally finding the base of her oil lamp, she quickly twisted the knob. Warm, golden light flared to life, chasing back the gloom. Releasing a sigh, Ivy collapsed onto the edge of her mattress and stared down at the haphazard disaster littering her floor. She rubbed a hand over her bleary eyes. Tomorrow, she would clean it all tomorrow. But first, she eagerly pulled the wrapped parcel onto her lap. Even though she already knew exactly what rested within, a foolish flutter took flight in her stomach all the same. It felt wonderfully akin to unwrapping a Christmas present. Mr. Vael had taken such remarkable care in assembling it, pulling the rough twine perfectly taut and folding the crisp brown paper with meticulous, flawless precision. She caught the end of the string and gave a sharp tug. The neat bow unravelled. The paper crinkled loudly as she peeled it back, releasing the subtle aroma of parchment and ink. Ivy froze. There was the thick journal Grandma Evelyn and Mr. Vael had selected for her, her midnight blue companion notebook, and the slender box that no doubt housed her new Coppergate fountain pen. But nestled squarely atop it all was something else as well. A pocket watch. His pocket watch. The flickering light from her bedside lamp caught the polished surface of the timepiece, causing the precious metal to gleam with a fiery luster against the dark leather of the books beneath it. Tentatively, she reached out, her fingertips brushing against the city skyline expertly engraved into its face, before dropping lower to trace the 4 letters carved deeply into the gold. HGCV, His Grace, Caelen Vael. But no, not His Grace any longer. She groaned to herself as her mind unhelpfully replayed the embarrassing events from her visit to his shop on a loop. That scandalous gossip paper. Madame Clarion claiming Mr. Vael was no longer Veritas's most eligible bachelor, that he was no longer even a duke. Him catching her snooping through his things. Tumbling backward, she lay upon her bed and simply stared at the ceiling, clutching his pocket watch against her chest. The soft tick-tick-tick emanating from the timepiece beat in time with her heart. Far too many questions now swirled through her mind, but chief among them was, why? Why had he abdicated? Why had he given her his pocket watch again? Why did her heart feel as if it were about to wing from her chest? Her attention dragged toward the doors of her wardrobe. Hidden within the dark confines of that cabinet hung the copper silk dress Fern had commissioned specifically for her. Tucked safely away within the drawer were the sweet, earnest letters penned in his careful hand. The very letters where he had named himself a fool, confessing he could think of little else beyond her. A sour knot of guilt churned in her stomach. Was this what he had endured? Was she the fool now? Except the agonizing truth was that it wasn't Fern she was currently pining for. It was Caelen Vael. Scowling at the ceiling, Ivy pushed herself back to a stand. She needed to move. She needed to walk off this sudden restless energy. But as she took a single step, her boot caught against another leather-bound spine. There was absolutely no room to pace in the cluttered disaster of her bedroom. Forced to stand still amidst the chaos, the dam finally broke. She let her mind traverse the dangerous shadowed paths she had ruthlessly kept barricaded since Daphne's party. What if Mr. Croft truly was Fern? If he was, then the man certainly had a rather good excuse for his recent silence. He was off dealing with a Drake. Surely she owed it to him to wait for his return, if only to properly sever their acquaintance, or their courtship, or whatever precarious attachment they had formed. Surely he means to propose. Daphne's excited voice unfurled within her memory. The words twisted like a blade between her ribs, stealing the very breath from her lungs. Ivy curled her fingers tightly around the cool gold chain of the pocket watch. Every letter, every thoughtful gift Fern had sent flashed through her mind. The cake, the chocolate croissant, the fruit tart, the gown. Those beautiful pearls she had flung out into the darkness of Ashdown Park. She desperately tried to separate the tangled mess of her emotions from the cold, hard logic of her situation. If Mr. Croft was Fern, none of this mattered. She could never claim him, even if he was the only man who had ever seemed to truly understand the deepest parts of her soul. Marigold fancied him. Marigold would die of heartache. But what if Fern was someone else? Someone she hadn't even considered yet. Someone who also had a perfectly valid excuse for his absence at the party and his agonizing silence now. Ought she not to give him the time and grace to resurface and explain himself before she allowed herself to pivot so swiftly? To become a fickle coquette, swaying at the very first sign of attention from a handsome high elf? She nearly choked on a huff of self-deprecating laughter, assuming that Mr. Vael even actually liked her. Perhaps he was simply being nice. Perhaps he was simply acting Christianly. They were partners in ministry now, after all. "I'm too tired for this," she mumbled aloud to the empty room. She sighed, her shoulders slumping in defeat as she collapsed back onto her bed. The movement shifted the quilt, disturbing her purchases from Vail's vellum further. As the companion notebook slid off the stack, a slip of paper peeked out from beneath the cover. Frowning, Ivy gently set the pocket watch atop her bedside table and pulled the hidden paper free. Unfolding it beneath the warm glow of the oil lamp, her eyes swept over the elegant script.
I hope you know that these are gifts, and if you try to stop by tomorrow with payment for me, I will simply lock the door and not allow you entry. Thank you for finally visiting my shop. I pray you did not find it too ridiculous. CV.
Her pulse gave a sudden, traitorous leap. She bit down hard on her lower lip, entirely torn between a smile and a scowl. He was so endearingly stubborn. Setting her new, thick journal aside upon her nightstand next to the pocket watch, she tentatively picked up the companion notebook and tumbled back onto the mattress, settling onto her stomach. Propping herself up on her elbows, she flipped open the cover. For a long, heavy moment, she merely stared at the cream-coloured paper, at the stark, undeniable sight of her name and his penned so intimately together. "Caelen," she whispered into the quiet room, testing the shape and sound of his given name on her tongue. A scalding heat rushed to her cheeks. She ducked her head, burying her face in her pillow with a muffled groan. She was being entirely ridiculous. It was simply the exhaustion talking. It had been an impossibly long day, and her mind was playing tricks on her, making her feel infatuated with Mr. Vail. Quiet, gentle, perfectly intriguing Mr. Vail. She turned her head, her gaze snagging on the slender box resting on her bed. A sudden, reckless idea sparked to life in her mind. Did she dare? She hesitated, her fingers curling into the patchwork quilt, before she finally reached out. She opened the box and slipped the new fountain pen from its velvet bed. Uncapping it with a quiet click, she let the silver nib hover just a fraction of an inch above the page. This was undoubtedly foolish, frivolous. A terrible waste of ink and space within her magic, no, particle entanglement, notebook. She ought to save the parchment for when she had a truly useful thought concerning the children's summer activities. Sucking in a deep, fortifying breath, she allowed the nib to meet the paper. "Threatening to lock a patron out of your establishment. You are thoroughly impossible, sir." She stared at the drying ink, humming with nervous energy. She couldn't believe she had just done that. Had she truly just done that? What if he thought she was flirting with him? What if she was flirting with him? Weariness crashed over her, settling deeper into her bones. She needed to calm down. She needed to sleep. But the thought of dragging herself to the wash basin and completing her full nighttime routine felt absolutely impossible in her current state. Perhaps she could simply brush her teeth and wash up in the morning. Just as she moved to close the journal, a flicker of dark movement caught her eye. Ivy sucked in a sharp breath. Fresh ink bloomed across the page, unfurling itself seamlessly into Mr. Vail's elegant script.
I see you found my note. You are up late.
This time, she didn't hesitate. Heart racing, she swiftly wrote back, "So are you." His reply was near instantaneous, a surprisingly vulnerable admission.
I fear I often have trouble sleeping, Miss Fairwood.
She stared at those words for a long moment. Before she could figure out how to respond to such a quiet confession, though, another line of text smoothly appeared beneath it.
Are you well? Is anything amiss?
Her pulse spiked further, hammering a frantic rhythm against her collarbone. No, she felt very unwell. Her cheeks burned, her stomach fluttered. She was a woman now entirely out of her depth. Corresponding with Fern had been one thing, corresponding with Caelen Vael was another matter entirely. Chewing on her bottom lip, she pressed the nib to the page once more and claimed, "I am perfectly fine, thank you. I was just admiring this pocket watch of yours that seems to have ended up in my possession again." She waited. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the blank space below her sentence. Finally, the dark ink began to flow again.
Yes, and I fear that I have already informed Elodie that I have given the watch to you, and advised her to strictly refuse you, should you try to return it again. I hope you do not mind. I like being prepared for all potential outcomes.
Ivy winced at the reminder of the rather cowardly way she had used poor Elodie to return the timepiece last time. She hastily scrawled out a reply, "I am sorry about that." His response came just as quickly.
I am sorry that I made you uncomfortable with my giving of it before. That was not my intention.
Ivy hesitated. Her pen hovered uselessly above the page as she struggled to find the right words. Slowly, her gaze drifted back up to his previous admission, the one detailing his struggles with sleep. With a heavy heart, she slowly penned, "I am sorry. Life has just been very confusing of late." A long pause stretched. The silence in her bedroom grew suddenly, overwhelmingly vast. Then he wrote,
I certainly know the feeling.
She stared at the sentence, her brow furrowing as she tried to riddle out the deeper meaning behind the simple words. With another swirl of dark ink, a final line appeared beneath it.
Good night, Miss Fairwood. Do rest well. Elodie and I will be by to fetch you for our outing at noon, sharp, on Saturday.